He has been and continues to be questioned by federal agents. As a result of those communications, Shahzad has provided useful information to authorities.
Joint Terrorism Task Force agents and officers from NYPD interviewed Mr. Shahzad last night and early this morning under the public safety exception to the Miranda rule. He was, as the Attorney General noted, cooperative and provided valuable intelligence and evidence. He was eventually transported to another location, Mirandized, and continued talking.
Faisal Shahzad was arrested and questioned immediately, and he talked. He was Mirandized, and he talked, and he talked, and he talked, and talked, and talked, reportedly confessing to receiving bomb-making training in Waziristan in Pakistan, also to trying to blow up an SUV in Times Square on Saturday, and to having a gun in his car, information that can now be used in a court of law to try to convict Mr. Shahzad on terrorism charges. What's wrong with this picture? It's too legal.
Don't give this guy his Miranda rights until we find out what it's all about.
I wonder if they've already given him his Miranda rights.
Well, I think obviously that would be a serious mistake until we find out as much information we have, and there are legal ways of delaying that.
What exactly makes reading someone their Miranda rights such a mistake? What's the disadvantage to American counterterrorism and law enforcement officials using legal American tactics to arrest and question a terrorism suspect? No one can quite put their finger on what the exact problem is. It apparently just doesn't feel right. That was made quite clear today when Congressman Peter King of New York heard about the arrest and, as is his habit, sprinted toward the nearest reporter. He blurted out this little gem of inchoate, pure, unconstitutional feeling. Quote, "I hope that Attorney General Eric Holder did discuss this with the intelligence community. If they believe they got enough from him, how much more should they get? Did they Mirandize him? I know he's an American citizen, but still." He actually said that. That's in the quote. But still. I know there's a whole Constitution, we're America thing, but still, I just hate it. Senator Joe Lieberman took that free-floating, strategically incoherent anti-Constitution feeling even further today, announcing plans to amend American law to strip you of your citizenship, not if you're convicted of anything, not if you're even suspected of anything, but purely on the basis of the government deciding you have bad affiliations.
There is an existing law, which hasn't been much used. It says that if an American citizen is shown to be fighting in a military force that is an enemy of the United States, then that person loses their citizenship, and they no longer have the rights of citizenship. That's an old law that was adopted during a very different time of conflict. I think it's time for us to look at whether we want to amend that law to apply it to American citizens who choose to become affiliated with foreign terrorist organizations, whether they should not also be deprived automatically of their citizenship and therefore be deprived of rights that come with that citizenship when they are apprehended and charged with a terrorist act.
Automatically deprived. It should be noted that Senator Lieberman is a little unclear on his facts here. If you are arrested in the United States of America, the reason you get due process rights, the reason, for example, you get read your Miranda rights is not because you're a citizen. Even foreigners arrested here get due process and get read their rights. The reason you get due process if you are arrested in America is because this is America. Remember? We called Senator Lieberman's office today for clarification on his call to strip Americans of their citizenship without trial and without due process. As usual, no one in his office would call us back, which makes me worry that maybe he's decided to declare me not American anymore, and he didn't want to make an international call. Joining us now is Chris Hayes, Washington editor of The Nation magazine. Hi, Mr. Hayes. Nice to have you on the show.
Ms. Maddow, how are you?
I'm good. I'm on the banks of the Mississippi, and so far, only half the bugs in town know I'm here, so I think I'm ahead of the game.
Yeah, it's nice to have some co-hosts.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Carry a little of the burden here. Faisal Shehzad apparently is talking quite readily to his questioners right now, and he was given his Miranda rights. Yet we are having a lot of outrage on the right that he has been Mirandized. Do you understand the anti-Miranda argument? Is there some substance to it?
No, I mean there's two strains of it. One is essentially just bad faith attempts to continue to use this terrorism cudgel on the president to try to move the debate as far right as possible, to try to wound the president, to try to create this narrative of week on terrorism. So there's just a kind of bad faith, knee-jerk way of attacking the president. Then there's people that are prosecuting a very old ideological grudge against Miranda. I mean, when Miranda was handed down in 1966 by the court, conservatives hated it then, and they've hated it for decades. They don't like it. They probably don't want you or I or citizens to have Miranda, a lot of them. So there is this old ideological vendetta that's being prosecuted against Miranda that is at the core of some of this.
I wonder also if we are at a point with this where there is I guess maybe a fork in the road between sort of paleo-conservatives on an issue like this, law and order paleo-conservatives, and libertarian conservatives, in that we're seeing people like I think most notably today, Glenn Beck, a host on Fox News Channel, saying actually it's important that these suspects are read their Miranda rights. We can't shred the Constitution just when it's not, just because it's inconvenient. To see a split between somebody like John McCain and somebody that's sort of the new right, the new libertarian right, in the form of Glenn Beck, does that split map with that old grudge against Miranda rights in the conservative movement?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, this is a sort of interestingly knotted ideological space, but I do think that one of the things you've seen is the influence of this kind of libertarian streak, particularly the campaign of Ron Paul and Ron Paul's views, has sort of suffused the Tea Party movement and the right, but only the parts of the arguments that have to do with the state's use of economic power, or wielding of economic power, and all the critiques he makes of American imperialism abroad and also the national security state's wielding of power here at home have been jettisoned because the neoconservatives control the kind of foreign policy apparatus. The question is whether that can be pried apart, and I do think there have been increasing concerns, and just in conservatives that I follow and read, about encroachments of the state in these kind of civil liberties situations, and I do think there's at least a potential for a fissure there. I don't think it's fully developed yet.
Chris, this new legislation that Senator Lieberman is proposing to strip citizenship from Americans on the basis of affiliations with bad people. Is this the sort of thing that Joe Lieberman might sort of like run with relish, not because he wants to pass it, but because he really enjoys making liberals mad?
Oh, God. Well, if he does, it speaks truly poorly of his character. I mean, I hope Joe Lieberman wakes up tomorrow and regrets saying what he did, because what he's proposing is a really odious piece of legislation. I mean, first of all, let's just say that the adjective affiliated in that sentence is doing a tremendous amount of work. That is a very, very loose criterion to establish for, quote, stripping someone of their citizenship. And second of all, as you noted, citizenship doesn't come to play in Mirandizing. I mean, this argument, this zombie argument that Miranda only applies to citizens refuses to die. And now we're seeing that they didn't even take that seriously to begin with, because now that it comes up here, they want to get rid of the citizenship.
Washington editor of The Nation, Chris Hayes, identifying today's zombie argument that won't die, for which we are very grateful. Thanks, Chris. Appreciate your time.
Thank you, Rachel.